Today we're going to be looking at some Boot Hill, and what I'd like to look at is just explaining how we can turn this into a bit of a campaign or a story mode. As we know, it's primarily a tabletop game of players versus players, or whatever the situation is. You can just do whatever scenario and it works fine, and then you can move on. But if you want to turn it into a bit more of a game, a bit more like a proper role-playing game, there's a fair bit of work that's required from the game's master or judge. But I'd just like to see how we can try and get everybody to get started, and what we need to begin. The first question that comes to mind is, well, let's address the elephant in the room. To miniature or not to miniature? That's basically where it starts. So this being a miniatures game, you can definitely deck out enough of a board if you wanted to go down that pathway, with miniatures and Wild West characters and buildings and so on. Make it easier so that everyone can see it. Big pitfall is that it does take a fair bit of overhead to put it all together. So what is option number 2? So this here is the basis of the map that is inside the base game. Now it's actually larger than this, and there's more to it. Like it's a little bit, it needs to be spread out a bit more. I've just got this on a couple of A4 sheets of paper that I've printed out to a smaller scale. If you wished, you could print it out on a slightly larger to get a bit more clarity. And then if you've got something like an AO printer nearby, you can take it down there and get it really done up well. Now what does also come, you just can see these little things right here. There it is. Let me zoom in on that. A little man with an A, an arrow pointing direction. And see how it sort of can get lost. But anyway, so when it gets to the tactical maps, you can do this quite easily and just have the cutouts that are used to decide how people are going to move, where they're going to move to. And then that way they can, do what they need to do. That's considered short range for a pistol. And this is like short range for a rifle. So it's kind of different. But anyway, so inside these, for the most part, all buildings were formed with a similar design. And with the modules, as well as the back of the Boot Hill book, they have some examples of indoor shops, and like the indoors for shops, hotels, bars, pubs, and so on. And that's a good thing, because you just reuse those. You don't need to do anything fancy. When you're indoors, obviously nearly everything is in short range, or even closer. So this sort of tactical map isn't required. The second step from this is just a hand-drawn map, just where you theatre of the mind and draw it out, and then players can work out roughly what they want to do, where they want to go. But then of course, should you choose to want to do the miniature thing with all of the fully spec'd out everything, you can do so as well. It's not that. There's a lot of options available for that, and you can get some decent medium cost. I'm not going to say they're low cost, because they're really not, but they're medium costs, where you can get individual buildings, or you might make a block like that and keep the action into one section. And you could do that quite simply and easily. And once you've got a few buildings, it's just about shaping the action block in a different size, different way, then that gets you a little bit more variety. So that's the first big question, is when you're going to be putting a game of this together. Theatre of the Mind it, which is good, we love that, and it's very late 1970s. Couple of miniatures. If you want to get a little bit more modern, you can get a few things 3D printed. Don't have to do a lot in terms of painting or anything, just as long as they're up and running. Miniatures of cowboys are available through a couple of different types of stores, so that's fine. There's a few games that do it. And then you've got just basic mud maps on how you want to proceed. Alright, so that's once the action supposedly starts. And this is an important place, the SA office. That's always important, remember that. It's where you go and get your the deed to your properties and have things surveyed. And there's a lot of really cool terms that you will learn as well. You've got to really do a bit of a deep dive into the genre, unless you already know. But if you're new to it, you don't have to go deep, but just enough to understand how the different towns were formed. The mining, the agricultural, the railroad barons, the land holders, lots of options. But anyway, that's the next thing, is we're going to have a quick talk about with getting a game up and running. In the base game of Boot Hill, as you can see, this is the downloadable and printable version. But essentially everything in here is fine for the players and the judge referee to start to get the characters together. So okay, you build your group. What do you do after that? And the modules that were available, and there aren't that many modules, but each module has their own little additional rules that add. And that's pretty much how the game works. Every time when there was a module, there was a little bit different rules added and things that the players could do. So this is just basically everything in the normal game. As described, line of sight is 90 degrees forward, and observations, you've got to actually see the person. Roughly scattered templates and things like that, explosion charts. We've covered a lot of this in the first video, so I won't go through much or any of this in great detail. Even the brawling and grappling is a lot more easier to understand. And then we get to the advanced rules. So the advanced rules change up how we do movement as well as shooting. You can change it up to make it a bit more dynamic. You can run everything by the character's base speed, let them move and do their shot, and then the next person or the next character move, shoot, and so on. Or you can all move, then all shoot in the order of the speed. But there's also an option for half move, and you can choose to shoot or not, then your other half move. So everyone moves up a piece, some taking shots of opportunity, and when you do that, you lose a bit of, lose a little bit more accuracy and so on. But it also just mixes it up, so even if you're low down on your base speed, you can still do a half move and shoot if the other person is just going to do a full move to run across the street or to move to cover before shooting. Then that way you can might get a shot or two off, just some happy shots. So with the advanced rules, we've got a little bit more on what makes speeds for horses and wagons and trains and so on. volleys of shots. You also have a bit more explanation of morale, especially when you've got gangs and military units where you take out the leaders or everyone's injured. How does that work? Because some characters just don't, and then others, they do. If you've got a high reputation, you affect it as well. So if your experience is higher, then you can also affect your, you improve your current morale or cause problems for the enemy. And then so on. So we've got lots of different things. With sharpshooting, this is when you can use if the person has, we will go back to our characters. Under speed and accuracy, you'll see we have these titles: poor, above average, crack shot, dead eye. You might allow certain shots to be available only for crack shots and dead eyes, or excellence and very goods, and so on. So that comes handy on top of everything else. And we're flipping and returning and losing pieces of paper. We love dynamite. At the back, isn't it great when it's so well managed here? When we're looking at miscellaneous characters, sheriffs, bounty hunters, all sorts of soldiers and everything else, they give you a base idea of what the accuracies look like, and throwing accuracy, bravery, and so on, using the terms that we know and love: above average to lightning, fast, fast or plus, quick to lightning, average to fast. So you can still play with that a little bit, but for the most part it tells you where they sit. And you might have an NPC that's a deadeye, for whatever reason, shooting out pistols from hands or lanterns in barns, causing fires, and so on. So basically, with a campaign, one person plays the referee and is the person who has the story and everything else attached to that. We know pretty much what a games master does, or DM, a referee, and ultimately this is a person that needs to have quite an understanding of what they want to do during this particular game. Whether it's a single one-shot game or part of an actual overall story arc, the DM, the referee's still got to really work out how the players are going to move about. Wild West games are a little bit different to a standard dungeon from like first edition D&D, and we'll have a look at what we can do with that. So essentially, the DM, or the referee, you'll have to forgive me if I keep referring to them. The referee has to have a set of structures as to what the players can and can't do and what's in and out. And unlike, say, Dungeons and Dragons, this is a game where the player's background is really, really, really important. What will happen is that a player will want to know what they can and can't do. And it's going to be entirely based on what that particular character has done and what they can do. If you have a character that works on a farm and goes from farm to farm and works between seasons, they're going to have a set of different skills than someone who's a bounty hunter, or someone who's come in from a background raised locally, raised internationally, and so on. Not everyone is going to be able to track. Not everyone is going to have a gambling skill. Not everyone is going to be able to know how to rope and shoe a horse, and so on. So these are all the things that you need to do as the DM, as the referee, when you're playing this game, is just work out who's got what skills, if anyone. as they get older? Or do you want to start them a bit older? Have one of them wants to be so like the John Wayne's character from Rio Bravo, slightly older, and so on. There's a whole section on healing, and cost of living becomes important as well because, well, you're constantly spending money in some way. And the miscellaneous characters. But what a referee is going to have to work out. It's a drinking game. Every time I say DM, take a shot. What the referee has to work out is a number of useful characters inside a town, and then have a bunch of obviously not so useful. So they might be the main saloon owner, the local gangster, the sheriff, the law of some sort, the marshals, and so on. So when you work out what you want the players to do, you're basically trying to provide them with options to move from point A to point B while giving them the lots of leeway to make their own decisions. So it's very easy, and in a tournament game, it's a railroad. Tournament games are easy. You can just go pop, pop, pop. You go to this, go to that, go to the other, and you're just done. Same thing with one-shots, but in a campaign, or in something that's a bit more 3 or 4, you want to sort of turn it into a bit more of a story arc. When the players arrive in a town, what they do is borderline random sometimes. They want to be bad guys, they want to rob a bank, they want to be heroes, they want to stop the local mob boss from taking everyone's money. They're on the hunt for a particular bandit that's led them to this town, who's taken up with a local gang. Now they got to enlist the sheriff. Basically, every single trope you can think of in the Wild West that goes from all of the great movies that we love, and so on. So there's a lot to work with, and trying to get the players to move on their own volition can be hard, but as a referee, this is in part what you're supposed to do. Help them move along. If they're trying to be lawful folk, when they see something that's not quite right, let them get in the middle, or let them see how it goes, and then eventually they get caught in the middle down the way. They'll either get told to step off or get asked to step in. In one of the adventures, the Lost Conquistador Mine, they've got some additional rules which include a few more options for morale as to what the characters can have. NPCs' reactions, so basically when you're interacting, how they are going to react to you, and what what your actions in the past, what you're known as, and so on. They talk a little bit about some of the other options that it can jump in, like night gunfights, traveling through various different types of terrain when you're moving from hex to hex. Dangerous animals, so not just like bears, wolves and things, but also how poison works, which is really quite useful, because when you get bit by a rattlesnake, you potentially can be out for days, if not dead, and then you'll be out for a very long time. Telescopes, and telescopes can also lead them to sights. So what you can do is, when you're dealing with, whilst in D&D you have magic items, you'll have quality of items. And so then basically what you need to do is you can have a high quality item which changes a few things and so on. You've got when you're walking between, like what horses need to survive as well, so as supplies, they need water and what to do with that. They need each character needs half a canteen of water per day, and as well as food and so on. So it's got options for optional rules for that. Here's one that I do like as well, is bronc busting. So you want to be a breaker, and this is again where a character's background can come into play. And I think you could also do some other options to jump in as well. So basically you roll a d10 and then you apply various modifiers, and unless you get thrown off, then you just keep rolling d10s until they're either broken or you've done 20 in a row. Ouch. Because yes, so basically you can keep taking damage as well. So you might just end up being knocked out by bronking, by trying to busting the bronc, or breaking, if you want to be a breaker. Again, you could do that as part of the background. Who's got better options, who can do it, or who's done it in the past, get better experience on it. But yes, so when you get thrown, you could potentially get a mortal wound, ouch, and so on. So the referee has to work out how the players get into the town and what their overall goal is supposed to be or going to be, with a slant that they may want to go sideways. You might be thinking, oh, I want to set this up so that they come in and they have to take out the evil moneylender that's racketeering the town and taking everybody out, and they've got his own band of goons that punch up and so on. Now, whether the players themselves end up doing that or rivaling them or trying to stop them, you've just got to be aware of that, because they're players and they'll do whatever it is that they want to do. So some of the basic tropes that we do love about the Wild West is there's usually ranching involved, scenery, you want to be able to get them out and about, or the final showdown somewhere near a dry creek, or your rifle butt, and you can knock them out for a round. But they're all optionals. When someone gets shot in the head, they might have a percentage chance of falling unconscious anyway. The stunning chart as an example. So, injury from dynamite, explosions. We love dynamite. Dynamite's good. Cannons, Gatling guns. Things like Gatling guns, they just inflict X number of wounds, and then it's crazy, because the way that it's that's how deadly they're perceived. If you want to do misfires, every time you fire you have to roll a misfire check, or you could just do it periodically, or you figure it out. Again, that all rolls into that you'll figure it out category. But as the referee, what you say goes, and you do need to make sure that everyone understands what is expected of them as players. So that session 0 is really useful. Expenses, miscellaneous, etc. When you need to get a doctor in, buying new equipment, and so on. Alright, so hopefully we've done a little bit on that it makes a bit of sense. I can see why it took another dozen years for the next revision of this to come through. They probably turned it more into an actual role-playing game, but by then everyone understood how role-playing games worked, and how to write out the rules. Whereas at this stage, this was very much in the hands of the referee and the players, what they can and can't do, who they are, what they've got, and so on. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you would like to see more content, obviously, then like, subscribe, and so on, and leave a few comments. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to field them. There's a few pieces that obviously I don't want to get into, but I'm happy to deep dive if you wished to look into them a bit later. But thanks for sticking around, and I hope to see everybody again, sort of, I suppose, and hope that you watch the content. Alright, support if possible, etc. Alright, thank you very much everyone, and I look forward to putting out another one of these soon. Alright, thanks.